For decades, Red Skelton was one of America's most beloved entertainers, a comedian whose charm, wit, and warmth brought joy into millions of homes. From his unforgettable characters to his heartfelt monologues, Red wasn't just a performer, he was a symbol of a gentler, kinder era of television. Yet few fans know that one of the most important projects of his career, his final TV special, was quietly shelved and never aired. Not because it lacked quality, not because Red had lost his touch, but because what he captured on camera was something no network at the time wanted the world to see. Now, after years of collecting dust in the archives, this long-lost special has finally resurfaced, and what it contains has left fans stunned. This wasn't just another comedy hour or a nostalgic reunion. Insiders say Red poured his heart into this final performance, blending humor with deeply personal reflections about fame, aging, and how the entertainment industry had changed around him. Those who've seen early cuts describe it as emotional, surprisingly raw, and unlike anything Red ever released. Some even claim it reveals the answer to a long-standing mystery about why his career ended so abruptly. So why did the networks hide it? Why, after decades of celebrating Red Skelton's legacy, did they refuse to let this final masterpiece air? And how did it suddenly reappear after so many years in obscurity? What happened behind the scenes is shocking, heartbreaking, and ultimately inspiring, and the truth behind Red Skelton's never-before-seen final TV special is far more dramatic than anyone expected. When Red Skelton filmed what would become his final TV special, he had no idea it would be locked away for decades. To him, it was a chance to reconnect with the audience that had supported him since the early days of radio and television. Red approached the project with the same enthusiasm and dedication he brought to every performance. Even though he was noticeably older and navigating a rapidly changing entertainment landscape, the networks had shifted their focus toward younger, edgier content, pushing aside many classic comedians who once dominated American screens. But Red believed, not arrogantly, but sincerely, that his timeless humor still had a place. With this special, he hoped to remind the world why he remained one of the most cherished entertainers of all time. During the taping, those in the studio sensed immediately that this show was different. Red wasn't just performing, he was opening up in ways he rarely had before. While he still delivered the beloved characters that defined his career, viewers in attendance said his transitions between comedy and reflection carried an emotional weight they had never seen. Red spoke candidly about the friends he had lost, the changing values in show business, and the bittersweet reality of being a performer whose era was slowly fading. This wasn't scripted solely for laughs, it was Red sharing his truth, wrapped in humor, sincerity, and the gentle wisdom he had earned over a lifetime. Insiders from the production describe how deeply personal the monologues were. At moments, Red paused longer than usual, drawing from memories that clearly stirred something within him. The audience in the room didn't just laugh, they cried with him. They felt the nostalgia, the sorrow, and the gratitude he carried. It was raw, authentic, and profoundly human. For many, it was the most moving performance he had ever given. So when the taping wrapped, Red believed the special would air and perhaps become a final love letter to the millions of fans who had grown up with him. But soon after, everything changed. Executives from the network screened the special and were immediately divided. While some praised the depth of emotion Red brought to the project, others felt it was not marketable enough for modern television. They argued that audiences had moved on, that Red's style was outdated, and that broadcasting such a reflective, emotional show wouldn't attract the ratings they needed. Quietly, and without Red's knowledge, discussions began about shelving the project. Some insiders claim the network was concerned that airing the special might emphasize how drastically times had changed and how out of touch they had become with their older viewers. What made the situation even more heartbreaking was that Red had no idea this decision was being discussed. He was already dealing with personal challenges, including health concerns, and the emotional toll of watching an industry he loved evolve into something unrecognizable. Friends say that Red waited eagerly for the air date, believing the special would reconnect him with the public, and perhaps even reignite interest in his work. Weeks became months, and months became years. Still, the network remained silent. As time passed, Red slowly accepted that the special might never see the light of day. He never publicly complained, and he never spoke negatively about the executives who quietly buried his work. Instead, he focused on small live performances, art, and personal projects. But those who knew him well understood that it hurt him deeply. The special had been more than entertainment. It had been an expression of who he truly was at that stage in his life. As years passed and Red Skelton continued to drift quietly out of the public spotlight, the mystery surrounding his final TV special deepened. Those who had worked on it remembered its emotional power vividly. Yet no one could explain why a performance so heartfelt had been pushed aside so abruptly. Inside the network, the decision became something no one wanted to talk about. Former executives, when approached years later, claimed it was simply a matter of changing programming needs. But insiders tell a different story, one that reveals a deeper discomfort with the special's tone and message. They feared Red's brutally honest reflections on aging, fame, and the harsh transformations in show business would spark controversy or criticism. For a network obsessed with staying modern, the vulnerability Red displayed was considered too risky. Despite the silence surrounding the project, a few loyal crew members refused to let it be forgotten. Some kept personal copies of early cuts, while others spoke in private circles about the beauty and brilliance of Red's final performance. They recalled scenes where Red blended comedy with heartbreak, using his trademark characters to reveal personal truths he had held inside for decades. At times, he addressed the camera almost as if speaking directly to longtime fans, thanking them, asking them to remember him fondly, and acknowledging that his era was fading. These moments were powerful, sincere, and unlike anything the network wanted to broadcast during an era dominated by sitcoms, game shows, and fast-paced entertainment. As this long-lost special slipped further into obscurity, Red himself seemed to accept the reality that it might never reach the audience he created it for. Still, he carried no bitterness publicly. Instead, he channeled his energy into painting, performing small shows, and meeting fans who cherished him. Friends say he often mentioned the special quietly, not in anger, but with a sense of longing. He believed it had been some of his best work, perhaps the truest reflection of the man he had become. The sadness came from knowing the world never got to witness it. Then, something unexpected happened. After Red's passing, interest in his life and career surged once again. Documentaries, interviews, and retrospectives reminded the public of how significant he had been during television's golden age. New generations discovered his comedy, fascinated by its purity and warmth. And with this renewed attention came a wave of curiosity about the rumored lost special. Fans wanted answers, historians wanted documentation, and archivists wanted to know whether it even still existed in any form. It didn't take long for one curious researcher to stumble upon a forgotten catalog entry, buried deep inside a network archive, an unlabeled reel listed only with a date and a vague description. What followed was a journey that shocked everyone involved. Archivists traced the reel to an old storage facility, where outdated programs had been kept for decades. Inside a dusty box marked for disposal, they found several original tapes, including the complete recording of Red's final TV special. It had been stored improperly, nearly lost to time, and without the persistence of one archivist. It might have been destroyed along with other discarded material. When the tapes were restored and transferred to modern format, those who viewed the footage were stunned. The special looked exactly as insiders had described: funny, emotional, deeply personal, and unmistakably powerful. Word of the discovery quickly spread. Scholars, fans, and former collaborators were eager to see what Red had left behind. After years of silence, the special was finally about to be revisited, bringing with it questions about why it had been buried and what Red truly hoped to say. With his last televised performance, for many, the rediscovery felt like a gift not only to entertainment history, but to the legacy of a man who gave so much of himself to the world. The long-forgotten special was finally on the verge of being seen, and what it revealed would leave everyone speechless. As the forgotten footage rolls on, it becomes clear that Red Skelton wasn't just performing a routine. He was quietly delivering the most revealing commentary of his entire career. In this part of the special, Red shifts away from his classic characters and begins sharing deeply personal stories from the early years of his life, many of which had never been heard publicly. His tone is calm but reflective, as if he knows this might be the last time he has the chance to say these things in front of a camera. He talks about his childhood struggles, his early failures, and the mentors who shaped him when he was nothing more than a traveling performer, trying to survive each week. The audience watching the recovered recording can feel the sincerity in his voice, and it instantly sets this special apart from anything he had done before. The producers who later reviewed the footage said they were stunned by how honest and vulnerable Red allowed himself to be. He explains how comedy became a way of healing his own pain. Long before the world began seeing him as a master entertainer, he recalls nights when he performed for tiny crowds but treated every single person as though they were the most important audience of his life. He reflects on the pressure of television fame, explaining that behind the laughs, there were long stretches of doubt, loneliness, and exhaustion. Hearing this from someone so often seen as a source of joy gives the special an emotional weight no one expected. But what comes next is even more surprising. Red begins addressing the future of entertainment specifically, the changes he believed were already leading television away from heartfelt humor and toward something colder and less meaningful. Without naming names, he talks about younger entertainers who, in his view, relied too heavily on shock value and cruelty instead of genuine warmth. He warns that if the industry keeps going down that path, the true art of uplifting comedy will eventually fade. The way he delivers these thoughts is not harsh or bitter. It's almost fatherly, as though he's trying to protect something sacred before it disappears. Looking back at it now, his words feel eerily accurate, almost like a prediction of the decades that followed. About halfway through the segment, Red speaks directly to viewers of the future, something that startled the archivists, who rediscovered the footage decades later. He says he doesn't know when this special will be seen or who will be watching, but he hopes that kindness, decency, and simple laughter will still matter as much as they did when he was young. He tells the audience that even if the world becomes noisier and more complicated, humor rooted in love will never lose its power. This message would have hit hard whenever it aired, but hearing it now, so many years later, makes it even more powerful. The most emotional moment comes when Red reflects on the people he lost throughout his life. He doesn't dwell on sadness, but he acknowledges that grief shaped him just as much as success did. He mentions friends, fellow entertainers, and loved ones, explaining that their memory guided his work every single day. He says that comedy never erased the pain, but it helped him carry it. This level of honesty was something audiences had never seen from him, and it gives the special a raw and almost unfiltered authenticity that feels rare even today. By the time this segment ends, viewers are left with the sense that Red Skelton wasn't just performing. He was documenting his philosophy, his fears, and his hopes for generations he would never meet. This wasn't just another TV appearance. It was a final message, thoughtfully crafted and quietly delivered, preserved in film reels that no one expected to ever see. And as the recovered footage fades to the next part, one thing becomes clear. This special was more than a performance. It was a farewell letter from a man who devoted his entire life to making the world smile. As the final segment of Red Skelton's long-lost special begins, there's an immediate sense that everything is building toward one last message he wants to leave behind. The brightness of the studio lights softens, and Red steps forward without any props, costumes, or characters, just himself. This moment alone is striking, because for decades audiences were used to seeing him transform into larger-than-life personalities. But here, he stands plain and unfiltered, looking directly into the camera with the calm assurance of a man who has lived a full and meaningful life. The silence in the studio becomes part of the atmosphere, almost as if everyone present instinctively knew this portion would be remembered long after the cameras stopped rolling. Red begins by talking about gratitude, something he believed was the foundation of everything he accomplished. He expresses his appreciation for the viewers who supported him through countless shows, specials, and tours. He says he never took a single laugh for granted, because each one represented a shared moment of joy between him and the audience. He admits that there were times when he doubted himself, times when he thought he had given all he could, but the continued support from families across the country kept him going. This heartfelt reflection reveals a man who understood the value of connection better than most entertainers, and it is clear that he cherished the bond he created with millions of people. Then, Red shifts into a discussion about legacy, not the kind measured in awards or ratings, but the legacy of kindness. He explains that entertainers often become obsessed with staying relevant or topping their last success, but he believes true impact comes from the simple acts people remember. Long after the spotlight fades, he shares a story about a child who once wrote him a letter saying his comedy helped her after a difficult family loss. Red says he kept that letter in a drawer for years, as a reminder that his purpose went far beyond performing. Moments like that made him understand that laughter can be a bridge between pain and healing, and he hopes future performers will carry that belief forward. Suddenly, the tone of the special takes a deeper turn. Red begins speaking about the passing of time, acknowledging that he has reached a stage in life where memories often feel more real than the present. He talks about the friends he lost and the changing world around him. Instead of sadness, though, there is a peaceful acceptance in his words, as though he has finally made peace with every part of his journey. He admits that he misses the old days of television, the camaraderie, the creativity, the innocence, but he says he is grateful he lived during a time when laughter genuinely brought people together. He hopes that even if entertainment evolves, the heart behind it will never be lost. What truly surprises viewers is the closing message Red delivers with striking clarity. He tells the audience that if they ever feel overwhelmed by life, they should try to find something that makes them smile, even if it's small. He says that joy is not a luxury, it is a necessity, and without it, the world becomes dimmer and heavier. He encourages people to treat one another gently, to forgive more often, and to remember that everyone is carrying struggles they rarely talk about. These simple, almost old-fashioned values suddenly feel profound coming from a man who lived through war, fame, loss, and an ever-changing industry. As he reaches the end of his monologue, Red lifts his eyes toward the camera with a soft expression that almost feels like a goodbye. He says he doesn't know where his career will go from there or how much time he has left on stage, but he hopes that whenever people remember him, they think of kindness before comedy. He ends with a final gentle smile and says, "Good night, and may God bless." The studio remains completely silent as the recording fades out, as if everyone knows they have witnessed something that was never meant to be ordinary. When the rediscovered footage finally reached the public decades later, viewers were stunned by its sincerity, wisdom, and emotional depth. What was once an unaired special became a treasured piece of television history, a final, unexpected gift from Red Skelton himself, reminding the world that even after the curtain falls, compassion and laughter never truly disappear.